So we are meant to really understand what we see and feel with our senses in the light of what God has already revealed. If we move beyond that, then we move into the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which has given us great problems. That tree was in the garden for sure, but that tree was particularly denied us to eat from it. And the result of eating from it has been what we've got now as so-called science, where we have our politicians say that it's faith is not fact. Their view is that science is the one that is to be believed. Now, listening to Gideon Hartnett and folk like that, it's very real that he says science is no longer science as it is, because of the fact that they don't look at what God has already revealed. Now, we have at the moment, in our scientific community, we have skin cells that are being used to make stem cells, which will be combined with a pig embryo. And that will be forming parts of our bodies, livers, heart, those things. They want to make sure that it doesn't form a brain. They want to. This is the technology that they're using at the moment. They say it is real. This is science that is making what are called chimeras. They are actually beings that have combined the whole sort of thing of not a pig being a separate species, but now combining with it being a combined species with man, so that we can harvest those organs and produce them so that a person can get a replacement liver, can get a replacement lung, can get. So they found that the sensors say that the pig is the most likely to be accepted within the human body, the organs from the pig. Now, this is what the scientists are moving towards. We have them saying things like, well, it's going to be important for our society because we need these livers and hearts to be used for transplant, because there just aren't enough being harvested from people that have died in accidents. Now, the amazing part with this is that the actual work that they're doing is, on the surface of it, believing that we are going to save lives. And yet, on the other hand, we are killing the unborn at a dramatic rate. I've got the figures here that are very, very real. 125,000 abortions per day throughout the world. 40 to 50 million abortions each year. So on the one hand, we have them trying to investigate how they can harvest these really livers and hearts and things from pigs that have been manufactured in the laboratory. And yet we have this carnage that's occurring worldwide. Now, of course, Planned Parenthood came up with the idea that why waste a baby that's been aborted? Why not sell a heart? Why not sell a liver? Why not sell a kidney? And this is where they've come horribly undone, because they were making money out of the aborted babies that were, and they would carefully abort them. They would make sure that there would be the part that the person wanted was harvested. So, and that's what's been I'm sure, maybe you haven't seen the videos. Some people find this quite squirmish to look at. To consider even that an organisation like Planned Parenthood that would get through 330,000 abortions per year, and they would harvest those and find markets for them across the way. So it's important for us to really, really look at this area of what the world says about killing the unborn and what God says. Because if we don't, we are going to have really, it's an interesting sort of situation where we find that people are even afraid to talk about abortion in the churches. I prefer the word killing the unborn, and I prefer the ravages of killing a child that is developing in the womb. When does life occur? From conception. That's what's been accepted right from the beginning. And yet we find that there are many, many things that people have put up. This is what the world believes. It's just a clump of tissues. It is not human. It has no legal rights, just the products of conception. And they still use that term today. When there is not necessarily an abortion, but a person that has brought forth a stillborn child, they say, oh, it's just the products of conception, and put in a bin. The world will say, your life will be ruined. You have a career to consider. Other justifications that are very strong out there at the moment. If a child, and it still happens in America, in Australia, if a child is conceived in rape, they say that the aborted baby should occur. The result of... Now, I have something here. We're going to see some things this morning. What they hit on is, particularly with they're conceived in rape, they say, oh, surely a compassionate society. Why should the woman be labelled with a child that has been conceived in that way? Surely she needs to be freed from that, and it's quite justifiable that we actually do something about that child that's conceived that way. Well, let's listen to what. Every time I look at this, I think of the amazing courage it took to actually say this, to actually come back into the place. Now, this is a lawyer.
Now, we've all heard someone say that I'm against abortion except in cases of rape. Try saying that to my next guest. She was conceived in rape, and she's made it her mission to change minds that babies like her deserve to be born too. Rebecca Kiesling joins me now. Rebecca, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
We're 39 years away from Roe versus Wade decision of the Supreme Court. A lot of people who consider themselves pro-life say, except for cases of rape, incest, life to the mother. I want to talk about your story. You were adopted. You started looking for your birth parents, and what did you find out?
I found out that I was conceived when my birth mother was abducted by a serial rapist. And it was a worst case scenario. She's 4'10", really petite, single mom, heading to the grocery store at night. And that's how I was conceived.
And then your mother, your birth mother, gave you up for adoption. You were adopted by a family. And when you confronted the adopted family about your past and the fact that you were the victim of rape, tell me what your stepfather said to you. How did that conversation happen?
Well, my adopted father, I asked him how he felt about abortion, because of course that's the first thing I thought of. And he said to me, well, I felt like it should be a woman's choice. And I said, you mean that you think that the totality of my entire existence wasn't worth having to put her through the 8 months from the time she found out she was pregnant? Like, you've witnessed my whole life. You think my life wasn't worth it? And he instantly said, no, I don't believe that. And I thought, gosh, how would I ever get to the point where I would believe such a thing? And he had been a professor, and he just felt like on campus it was just expected that, to be pro-choice.
Rebecca, you were featured in The Gift of Life, which is a movie that I've had a part in helping bring to the screen. It's a powerful story, and the whole video to me is powerful, but your particular piece of it just stunned me, and it was so very immense, but it had an impact on someone else, Governor Rick Perry, who saw it in Iowa, met you in Iowa, and it it so changed him that the very next day he made a decision and publicly announced it. Then in South Carolina this week, he had this to say, and I want us to take a look at it.
I've always been a very pro-life legislator and lieutenant governor and governor. And I did have the exceptions for rape and incest historically. And sitting down with an individual who, Rebecca Kessling, who was a product of rape. And we had a long and a heartfelt conversation. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Governor, are you telling me that, she said, I understand your concern about the issue and having an exception for rape and for incest. But she said, are you telling me that my life is not just as important? And I have an answer for her. And she touched my heart in a way that at that particular point in time, I realized that if you're going to be pro-life, you got to be pro-life. You can't be partly pro-life.
Rebecca, you're seeing that for the first time, Governor Perry's comments this past week in South Carolina. How does it make you feel to hear that your story from the movie Gift of Life had that kind of impact on a governor and a presidential candidate?
I've been doing speaking for a long time, and that night he told me that I had changed his heart, and it was what I would call an Esther moment for me. And just one of the greatest moments of my pro-life ministry. And then for him to come out and to publicly share what had privately occurred within his heart was an absolute blessing. He didn't have to do that.
You know, your testimony in the movie is one that obviously we don't have time to go into in the detail that I wish. But after all these years, if there's one hope that you have, one goal, what is it?
I'm so thankful my life was spared, but it was for a reason. And it would be pretty selfish to not do anything in response. And so I want to see others protected too. I'm alive because of people who protected me, who are my heroes. And my goal is to be a hero to others. And I want to see abortion ended. I'm a huge supporter of personhood amendments, as you are, which I really appreciate.
Well, I appreciate you, Rebecca, and I want to say that I want you to see the Gift of Life movie, if for no other reason, to see the full testimony of Rebecca Kiesling. It is so powerful, along with the stories of many, many other people, and you can get it. Go to my website, mikehuckabee.com. There's a link directly to the Gift of Life, and Rebecca's story will touch you and move you and make you think in ways you haven't before.
Okay. So that's the other justifications for killing the unborn. And that is, if you conceive in rape, then the product of conception, as they call it, should be got rid of. Now, the answer to that, of course, is that why should the sin of the father affect the life of that unborn child? And the people are moved by a strange sort of compassion that they don't see the reality of that. Now that's a world way of thinking. The next thing that is brought forward is possible abnormalities of the child. We have tests today that are amniocentesis, that they want to take a section of the fluid from the mother's womb and work out whether there is an abnormality. And if they find an abnormality, they will press for that person to actually go through an abortion. Now, this is real stuff. But the number of abnormalities that have been diagnosed versus the number of children that have actually been born that have had no abnormalities. She stood with me on Parliament House in Adelaide here, and her little boy, they were told that this child would not be able to live for very long. This child would be physically and mentally deformed. And they accepted that. Her and they just simply came to that point where they said, well, if that's the case, we're going to care and love for this child anyway. Now, that boy stood alongside of me at that. He's a little mischief maker, little guy at that stage. And he's really, really precious. But he could have been taken out because of the world's way of diagnosing a condition and diagnosing an abnormality. How many are being pushed down that path because of a belief that that child's going to have an abnormality? Down syndrome, example. They feel that our nation should not be burdened with more Down. I've seen some amazing Down syndrome that are just so loving that they really. Who was it? Roy Rogers and his wife had a little Down syndrome. Yeah. They said that was the name of the book they wrote.
Angel Unawares.
Angel Unawares. They really came to see things that God wanted to show them through this little girl. It was so awesome. Now, if we start down that track of following the world's way of thinking and being influenced by that, like was on there just then, the professor had accepted that it was just pro-choice. Now, the interesting thing is that's another way the world looks at it. I've seen a further one where they're arguing now that no woman who has been raped should have an abortion. The women are rising up against it, the feminists are rising up against it, saying, hey, we need to have our choice. And they're saying, it's all right for you to make your choice, but I'm not going to force my choice on yours. It sounds so free, doesn't it? But that's that responsible freedom we're talking about. We're talking about, okay, if you have a free choice, you also have to take the consequences. The consequences of making a choice are very real, and will either make us free or not make us free. The ironic thing is that the original feminists, the original suffragettes, they were pro-life.
Yeah.
Come the 60s and 70s, they turned that around to say that it's our choice. My choice, my body. And they regarded the other thing that it was just a parasite feeding off the woman. That was a shocking thing. But people could understand that in the world. They didn't understand what God was doing with that child. And so at that moment, they accepted that lie that it was just a parasite feeding off the woman. And it's easy to see, isn't it? You know, as a woman's body swells with the pregnancy and the life is drawing from that, the teeth, the calcium, we talked about the calcium this morning, they will draw off into sustaining that life. But, you know, folic acid and all those things are drawn from the mother, comes through the umbilical tube, and coming at that place of actually saying, well, yeah, I can see where it's draining the life. Now, in a selfish world, nobody wants to give away anything. And unfortunately, with the 1973 Roe versus Wade was the means used to legitimise the whole area of abortion in America. But Roe was not a real name. Jane Roe was not a real name. McCorvey was a real name, and she has since changed from being pro-choice to pro-life. She was not given a fair go by the lawyers. The lawyers just wanted to use her and make it so that they would get a career in changing the law. And she was drug addicted, she was living on the streets, she was certainly homeless as such, but she was really taken down to that place. Now, this is one of her, she's written since an affidavit saying that she didn't understand, didn't even know what abortion was. She thought that aborting a battle was the thing that John Wayne would talk about in one of the movies. Oh no, you just don't fight anymore. She didn't understand what abortion was. But she worked in the abortion industry after that, the killing industry. the killing fields across America and Australia. It's interesting that every state in Australia has different laws. But right now in Queensland, in ACT and in Tasmania, and it won't be long before they're going to, and Victoria, they are pushing for full-term abortion. It's hit a bit of a snag in Queensland, but they say that they're going to push it through because of the world view at this stage. They are saying that this is outdated laws. If anyone seeks an abortion and goes to someone who isn't qualified, they're prosecuted in Queensland. But they're wanting now full term. This was pushed aside in October 2016, but it's still being pushed forward by the politicians. We've seen this White Ribbon Day that has really... Rob Pyne is an MP in Queensland who stood against White Ribbon in the sense that it was violence against women because they were going to go for abortion right up to full term. He was lampooned by the whole of the White Ribbon Brigade. But coming back to Ro, who's reading the Corby, she wrote this in the affidavit that she put. I've got the full document here. No one even explained to the mother that the child already existed and the life of a human was being terminated. No one ever explained there were options to abortions, that financial help was available, or that the child was a unique and irreplaceable person. No one ever explained that there were psychological and physical risks of harm to the mother. In the whole affidavit, she refutes the whole sort of thing of Roe versus Wade. Now that was 1973. Now, 3 generations on, 4 generations on, really, we have Mike Pence, the Vice President of America, standing up and saying, this is a life-winning day in America. He is the first Vice President to speak at a March for Life. The media doesn't cover the March for Life, but they will cover this one because of Mike Pence being there. 200,000 attended the pro-choice one, and they were saying, my choice, my body. They were saying, get your hands off our ovaries, that sort of stuff. They were very militant, very out there. But he has asked people from the pro-life movement to be compassionate people without being judgmental, and provide the resources to stand up for the unborn. And already hundreds of thousands of people are marching in New York this week on Friday, this last Friday, because of the life that is so important. So we're left here. What's the consequences of this line of thinking? The consequences of this line of thinking, this worldwide line of thinking, namely, it's just a clump of tissues, it's not human, no legal rights, just products of conception. Consider yourself, your whole career will be undermined through this. The consequences are that we have all these abortions, 40 to 50 million. In the United States, where nearly half of pregnancies are unintended, and 4 in 10 of these are terminated by abortion, there are over 3,000 abortions per day. 22% of all pregnancies in the United States, excluding miscarriages, end in abortion. That's taken from the info on abortion site Worldometers. In Australia, we have 90 to 100,000 abortions per year. In South Australia, we have 5,000. When this starts to outflow, we have consequences from that reality. And that is they're born alive and left to die. I've mentioned these statistics, but it's even worse in other states. People have left the abortion industry because they have not been able to take the babies that would be left to die. And really the logic behind it is, if we intended to kill this baby and they are not dead, why should we do anything to make sure that this baby lives when we have attempted to kill it? So doctors leave them to kill and leave them to die. Now, I've got one here. I'm sure that in 2008 you would have seen the Jessen was in Victoria. I've got a short one here where she's speaking at a congressional hearing, and this is in America. This is before Trump was elected, but it's a plea for him to do something about this whole area.
I wish to appeal not only to those present within this chamber today, but to my nation. We are here to discuss infanticide. I am greatly troubled that this hearing is even necessary, and that such a law to prevent infanticide must be constructed in the United States of America at all. Many Americans have no idea that babies can even live through abortions and are often left to die. But this does happen. I know this because I was born alive in an abortion clinic after being burned in my mother's womb for 18 hours. My medical records clearly state the following. Born during saline abortion, April 6, 1977, 6 a.m., 2.5 pounds. Triumphantly, I entered this world. I added that part. Apart from Jesus himself, the only reason I am alive is the fact that the abortionist had not yet arrived at work that morning. Had he been there, he would have ended my life by strangulation, suffocation, or simply leaving me there to die. Instead, I lived and have the gift of cerebral palsy as a direct result of lack of oxygen to my brain while surviving an abortion. And cerebral palsy, make no mistake, is a tremendous gift. I don't know if any of you understand, maybe you do, what a tremendous honor it is to have to lean on the strong arm of Jesus all the way to heaven. It is my honor in a country that doesn't wish to speak his name. I will. So by the grace of God, in my case, a nurse called an ambulance and had me transferred to a hospital. That nurse saved my life, and I am profoundly grateful to her for this. Those who wish to justify such unspeakable evil, such as leaving a baby without proper medical care to die, have become masters of the manipulation of language, intimidation, and defaming their opponents to achieve their wicked aims. As a nation, we are continuously exchanging the truth for a lie. We have neglected our soul. And what will it take for us to awaken from our numbness and indifference regarding this? Will we ever awake? I am confounded as well by the passivity so often demonstrated by otherwise good and just men, by the fact that we must plead with those in power to give the most vulnerable infants among us even one moment of their attention. This is a bipartisan issue, and I think it is important for the American people to weigh at this hour whether or not they wish to elect someone to the highest office in the land that favors infanticide, because that is what we are speaking of here. A child, exactly as I was, that had the audacity to live through her mother's abortion and needed immediate and proper care. So I would like to ask Mr. Trump to tell me and you where he specifically stands on this issue, and I would ask the same of Mrs. Clinton. I would also ask Senator Mitch McConnell to force a vote on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act before the end of this September. I have faced the consequences of our choices as a nation, as evidenced by my cerebral palsy. So if you choose to do nothing, I believe I at least deserve to know why you find this abhorrent practice tolerable. And I would respectfully ask that you tell me directly. It seems in some ways we have lost our way in this beautiful nation, but it needn't be so. We have only to remember that we are lent each breath, that we are all engraved upon the hands of God, and therefore cannot for one single moment be forgotten by Him. We need only to remember Jesus, who took me from my mother's womb to be His own. Thank you.
So, the consequences: born alive and left to die, wrongly diagnosed abnormalities, no informed consent. People are just, in the abortion industry, they are keen just simply to get an abortion. They don't inform. We've had some people that have said, oh no, talk about this after you've had it. As though that's the best that they can do. They don't tell about the heartache, they don't tell about the loss. They don't, there was things that McCorvey, Jane Roe, in that, she said she would hold the person's hand and they would be telling her that it won't be hurting, won't have anything. And one of them just looked over to where they were actually doing the abortion, and she saw the hand of a baby, and that freaked her out. This was something she didn't expect. They tend to sort of look on it as though it is not human. It is just something to be discarded as the products of conception. There was never, this is McCorvey again, there was never time for the mother to reflect or consult with anyone who could offer her help or an alternative. There was no informed consent. In my opinion, the only thing the abortion doctors and clinics cared about was making money. No abortion clinic cared about the women involved, as far as I could tell. Every woman had the name of Jane Roe. The conditions that happened in those times when it was legalised in America from 1972, rat-infested places, things that were not very, very hygienically. Now they say let's have safe abortions, let's have medically appropriate. You have to have all these safeguards in place. Okay, having looked at the serious side of this now, as what the world believes, we're going to look at what God has revealed. Now, this is where we get to the rubber end of the road, because this is more important than what the world says. First of all, we've got a few scriptures here. Genesis 1, verse 27. Genesis 1, verse 27. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female created He them. So right from the very beginning, the mandate was to multiply. It wasn't about killing. God's purpose was that man was to replenish the earth, to fill it. Now we have people today who talk about population maintenance. They want to bring the population down to 750 million people, when we have nearly 8 billion people on the planet right now. So how are they going to do it? They say we don't have enough resources. Well, God didn't regard this. God in the beginning has provided everything. Why should we let ourselves worry? Why should we be afraid? I've put my trust in Jesus. He's only a heartbeat away. And truly that's what happened. God gave man the mandate to fill the earth, to multiply and fill the earth. That's ironically one of the things that He has never had too much problem with obeying. He just had had a problem with the consequences of his choices along the way. Amazing thing that I see here in Isaiah 44 verse 28 says of Cyrus, "He is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid." Cyrus began his reign about 550 BC, and this prophecy was delivered not far from 150 years before he ascended the throne. None but God himself, or he whom God inspired, could have mentioned so long before the name of him who should deliver the Jewish people from bondage. And if this was delivered, therefore, by Isaiah, it proves that he was under divine inspiration. God knew about Cyrus before he was even conceived, before he was chosen to be the shepherd of Israel, before 150 years beforehand. That's God. God knows every one of our names. God knows us all. He knows the number of our days. Isaiah 9 verse 6, again a prophecy 700 years before. "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." It's predicting the very birth of Jesus. "By the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth and forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." This is God speaking about Jesus promised to be born 700 years before he was actually born. Psalm 139 verses 14 to 18. This is more personal. This is for each one of us. We went through that a fortnight ago.
What was that, sorry?
Psalm 139 verses 14 to 18, where we looked at from conception. A child starts to have a beating heart after 16 days. 16 days it starts to beat, and it doesn't stop until you die. "I will praise thee, Lord, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are your works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being imperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. How precious are your thoughts unto me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. When I am awake, I am still with thee." See, the world tends to look at a babe that has been born. They don't look at the babe that has been from the moment of conception. I said before that if they watched the growing of the child in the womb, if they honestly, and that's readily available today, this is without excuse, they can actually see the growth of a babe in the womb. From right through first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, to birth. They see a wonderful work of God being formed. And yet the child doesn't have any sort of ability to speak, doesn't have any ability to say, "Hey, let me out of here. I know you're going to kill me. Let me have another mother." It can't say that. It can't move that way. And so, Proverbs 24 verse 11 and 12. Burn this on your heart, because God is not going to hold us inexcusable, without excuse. Proverbs 24 verse 11 and 12. "If you forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if you say, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that ponders the heart consider it? And he that keeps your soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works?" So, we have churches today We have people today that say that, and understandably, they're being sold a bill of goods, and they're paid for it in issue. I've had that conversation before with many people in the church that say, oh, it's okay to kill if it's in rape. It's okay it's justifiable to do that. Justifiable to do that, they say. But God hears them. And He can see that if you don't do something to deliver that... Now, what more clear are we seeing here in Proverbs 24, verse 11 to 12? You cannot see anyone more vulnerable than a mother taking this child to an abortion clinic. Carrying that child. The child's got no say in it. Often the man has got no say in it too. Often those that have been close to the person who's got no say to it, they just see that it's a problem that needs to be solved. So it's by suction or by surgical, they get rid of that products of conception. But you see, this is where we see that if you don't speak up, if you don't do something about those that are being carried in the womb to an abortion clinic to be killed, what's it say? And those that are ready to be slain. 40 to 50 million people slain. Where was the church crying out at this point? Oh, but we don't want to get involved. Oh, particularly pastors don't want to say, oh look, we've got people in our congregation that have had abortions and we don't want to upset them. What are you going to do with the next one? What are you going to do with the next generation? What are you going to do with that lady who was raped and was born and is now a lawyer and influencing other people? She is so phenomenal in being able to stand as an advocate because she's got the credibility behind her. People say to me, you can't talk to me about abortion because you haven't got a womb. For people who have compassion for those things that have happened. But God doesn't differentiate between male and female here. If you forbear to deliver them, not just speak out against them, but to deliver them. Now, right at the moment, in Australia, they are putting bubbles around abortion clinics. They've got a bubble, a 150-metre bubble around Tasmania. They're getting a bubble around Darwin. They're getting a bubble around Victoria. You are not allowed to go within 150 metres. This is violence against women. This is violence in the womb. Now, the men don't get off with this. If women can't have an abortion, then the men shouldn't be able to get out of paying maintenance for them. For too long, men have gone ahead, conceived the child, and got off and not met their responsibility. Again, I come back to responsible freedom. If you don't understand what God says about a person, you are not going to be free if you do something that's wrong. But for too long, since the 60s and 70s, men have walked away from their obligations and left it up to the woman. So, now I come to the good part. I have 44 prophecies. I'm not going to go through each one of them here, but I have the scriptures here. There are 300 prophecies, but this is the best what I've seen from the net as the 44 prophecies that have been fulfilled concerning Jesus. And you're quite welcome. I can leave this and make this available to you if you want a copy. But inevitably, you will see that God knew about Jesus coming from the earliest part of Genesis right through to the whole sort of thing. And did you ever consider what it would be like if Jesus had been aborted? If Jesus had just been left to die as one of these people, we would not have a Saviour. But God is in control of these areas.
I don't think God forces us to do anything against our will. That's why the angel talked to Mary, and Mary accepted what he had to say. And honoured God, my soul magnifies the Lord.
My spirit rejoice in God my Saviour. When you go through, the soul magnify the Lord. My spirit rejoice in God my Saviour. For he that is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. She had a wonderful expression of how to magnify God within that situation. Yeah. Phenomenal. Now that's what the Catholic Church does not honour. She saw the birth of Jesus as something so wonderful, something that had been, again, prophesied all through the years, from Genesis 3:15, from the promise of God, right through to now. We've got we've celebrated the birth of Jesus, that he had to go through the same thing that we went through to be born. He had to get through the same thing where we were vulnerable in the womb. You know, the ones that are for abortion, they had a mother who didn't abort them. It's worthwhile going through each one. Messiah would be forsaken by God. Messiah would pray for his enemies. Soldiers would pierce Messiah's side. Yeah. Every one of them was specifically met and specifically fulfilled. Foretold and fulfilled. Foretold and fulfilled. That's amazing. That's amazing. So what God has revealed is that he not only looked after Christ, even when he was being driven off into Egypt, he was protected. All through the life, Jesus had the free will. The temptations speak about the free will. But if he had really messed up things, all of Mary's work in bearing him would have been lost. But he didn't. God is so amazing with that. So, to wrap this up, God revealed that male and female was what he created. It's only two. There is aberrations over time because of man's sinfulness. We have hermaphrodites. That's certainly only a very small percentage. But they're now being used as examples of transgender reform in terms of education policy. Cyrus was born according to God's purpose 150 years before he was born, before Cyrus was born. God knows whether we will ignore those who are being led to the slaughter, being carried in the womb to an abortion clinic. I'm just summarising some things here. Jesus was born according to God's purpose. He wasn't aborted. He wasn't killed in the womb. We didn't say, this is too painful. Hang on, I don't like this idea of childbirth. I think I'm going to where's the nearest abortion clinic? Sorry, we don't have any around here now. Jesus came, John 10:10, he came that we might have life, and life in all of its fullness. Abundant life. That's what he intended to say. And then Jesus died. His purpose for coming in all of this. When did he take his life? He willingly gave it up. He died. He rose again. And the awesome part is that with the resurrection comes an absolute, overwhelming thing of how much God loves us and how much he loves every babe, every child, every person. That Muslim one there, deaf little girl, multiplied hundreds of times. Yet men would say, the world would say, they take up too much resources, too much of this. Hitler's view was basically, it started with the Jews, but he was basically designed to kill every mental defective, as he described it, and every person that didn't match up to his ideal of what an Aryan was. So, but not God's. This worldview. Now, what we're left with here, with the challenge of Proverbs 24:11 and 12, is really what are we going to do about it from what we've gained this morning. That's an action thing. But only God can change the hearts and minds of people. But we need to be able to speak out and deliver those who are being led to the slaughter. So that's the practical thing that we can do from this time. Okay. If you want these 44 prophecies, I can make sure you get a copy and you can go through them. The beauty of it is that they are marked out the particular Psalms and fulfillment in the New Testament. So if you do, let me know. But I think that's enough for today. Next week we'll be looking at what